Hello and welcome in to the Week 6 edition of the ETSN.fm podcast. I'm Clint Buckley and I'm joined by Chandler Vessels. I can't believe we're halfway through the season, Chandler.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, and after this week, everyone will be in district play and the race for the playoffs will officially be on. We've got a couple of good games going on this week, and we're going to get right to it and start with probably the biggest game going on Friday in East Texas, and that's the rivalry game between Carthage and Henderson. Number 1 Carthage against unbeaten Henderson. Both teams come in without a loss on the season. This is one of the most intense rivalries in East Texas. They've been playing for a long time. I believe this is the 75th all-time meeting between these two schools. And these two teams played each other twice last year, if you'll remember. They played in the regular season, obviously, in district play, and then once again in the playoffs. And then they split those games, Henderson winning by 8 in the regular season matchup, and then Carthage winning, obviously, in the playoffs en route to the state championship. You've seen both of these two teams, Carthage and Henderson, fairly recently. What is your take on both of those teams, and what do you feel like could be the deciding factor in the game?
All right, I'll start with Carthage. Obviously, number 1 in 4A, the best team in the state. I saw them twice. A couple weeks ago against Gilmer, we saw that they were down at halftime. It looked like they were in a pretty big hole. It was 28-13 going into the locker room, and they just came out and dominated that second half. So that's they have Keontae Ingram, the best running back in the state. They have a great quarterback in Gunnar Capps, too. Lots of receivers to throw the ball to. But the main thing about Carthage is that defense's ability to just completely shut down teams. Gilmer didn't score at all in that second half 2 weeks ago. So, and their ability to make halftime adjustments is just second to none. So, obviously, it's going to take a lot to dethrone Carthage, but, we saw from last year, Henderson's able to hang with them. Maybe they're looking for a little bit of revenge from that playoff loss last year. I saw Henderson last week against Chapel Hill. They looked pretty dominant for the most part. Chapel Hill did put up 21 on them, but two of those touchdowns were the result of a fumble that already put them. They started in the red zone, so Henderson has a pretty good defense as well. I was impressed with their quarterback, Trey Hall. They don't throw the ball too often, but when they do, he's really efficient. He didn't have an incompletion in that game, and he's 40 for 53 on the season so far with no interceptions. So it should be a good game. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be there Friday. I think what's going to come down to is I feel like a broken record. I say this every week, but it's how defenses can defend against the running game against Carthage. That's a big part of what they do, obviously, with Keontae Ingram. He comes in with more than 600 yards on the season in 4 games. He's coming off his 2 best games of the year against White House and Gilmer. Henderson's well-versed in Keontae Ingram, having seen him twice last year, and he had a big impact on both of those games. So it's going to come down to how well Henderson's front, which has played very well this year. They come in, I believe, with 49 tackles for loss as a team through 5 games. I mean, if you do the math, that's an average of 10 a game. Yeah. So, they can get Carthage behind the chains and off schedule and down in distance. That could force Carthage through the air a little bit more than they want to be. We mentioned Gunnar Capps. He's had a great season. They have some really good receivers, but I think if you asked head coach Scott Surratt, the most important thing that his team needs to do every week on offense, and that's run the ball. Stopping Ingram is easier said than done, but that's what's going to be the objective for Henderson on Friday night. So that's a big one. Another big game this week is a District 12 6A game between the Woodlands and Lufkin. Lufkin has kind of rebounded nicely from that Week 1 loss against Longview. They've won 4 in a row. Their defense has played great in these last two games. They've held the last 2 opponents to 10 points total. And as a whole this season, the defense is allowing less than 100 yards rushing per game. And when you're playing that kind of defense, it makes everything else easier. And their offense has come together. Running back Isaiah Phillips is closing in on 600 yards already. He's got 9 touchdowns. He's kind of been the go-to guy on offense for them. They've been breaking in a new quarterback in Kewan Thomas. And while they have explosive receivers like Malik Jackson and Braylon Garcia and Jalen Polk, Isaiah Phillips has been their workhorse this year. He's really got things done for Lufkin. The Woodlands hasn't really played a whole lot in the early going. Their first 2 games were canceled because of Hurricane Harvey, and then last week they had a bye week. So only 2 games played in the first 5 weeks of the season, and they're going to be going on the road against Lufkin. And Lufkin is not an easy place to play for anybody. And but the Woodlands is good. They're coming off a trip to the 6A Division I state championship game last year. That was the only game they lost. So the Woodlands is playing. They have a lot of pedigree, and they've got some players coming back from that team. So I'm looking forward to this just to see how Lufkin continues to grow this season, because from week 1 to week 5, the level of improvement has been phenomenal for the Woodlands. For Lufkin, and I'll be interested to see how well they match up against a very solid team from the Woodlands. Also, District 11 6A continues this week. John Tyler can move to 2-1. They had a nice bounce back win against North Mesquite last week. They're facing Mesquite, which is winless in district. They're going on the road and facing them. Longview. How about Longview? After that tough, humbling defeat in the district opener against Mesquite Horn, they come back to really pull away from Tyler Lee in the second half. Back to Longview football. The quarterback duo there between Adarius Carter and Haynes King seems like it's something that they can build on moving forward, because you've got the best of both worlds between those 2 quarterbacks.
Adarius Carter is obviously a guy who can make plays either through the air or really on the ground, or he's even played receiver for them a few times. So Haynes King, a young guy, but really been impressed with what he's been able to do this season. He's close to 500 yards passing, and that's with sharing time with a bunch of other guys. Yeah. So he's only a sophomore. He's only I would only expect him to get better as the season goes on.
And they got a big game against Rockwall on the road. Rockwall is 1-1 after Heath won on the last play of the game, 28-27 last week. It was kind of a crazy week in District 11 6A last week. And then one more game involving East Texas. Tyler Lee is going to have a tough one at home against Mesquite Horn. Mesquite Horn is also 2-0 in district. Lee must win to avoid just a brutal 0-3 start. It'd be hard to recover from an 0-3 start in district and still get into the playoffs. But we'll see how Lee matches up against Horn on Friday. District 16 5A, what a crazy week it was last week. The 3 teams that win all got their first win of the season. That's just nuts. You got Marshall beating Texas High, Hallsville defeated Mount Pleasant, and then Pine Tree defeated Sulphur Springs. So those 3 teams, Marshall, Hallsville, and Pine Tree, all with wins number 1 to start district, and that's a great way to start district.
Yeah, I mean, especially Marshall. When I was doing the stats last night, that their quarterback JJ Green threw for, I think it was close to 350 yards against Texas High, which catapulted him sort of into the top 20 for the leaders for Texas. I know a couple of those other guys on Hallsville and Pine Tree had some big performances too.
Yeah, I mean the Pine Tree Sulphur Springs game was nuts last week. The final score was 55-47. There were a ton of points scored in the fourth quarter. I think 30-something points between the 2 teams in the fourth quarter. There was a pick 6 involved. It was just nuts. So I guess that's what we can expect the rest of the season in that district. This week in that district, we've got Greenville at Hallsville. Greenville was off last week, so this is their first district game. Then we have Sulphur Springs at Marshall and Mount Pleasant at Pine Tree. Texas High has its bye week this week. We want to give a special shout-out to our offensive and defensive players of the week from last week. How about Gilmer quarterback Poppy Brown, rebounding from Gilmer's loss against Carthage 2 weeks ago with a big-time performance in their win over Nacogdoches. He is our offensive player of the week. Poppy Brown, 26 of 37, 436 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and, oh, by the way, 94 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground as Gilmer gets it done and moved to 4-1, beating Class 5A Nacogdoches in a crazy game, 51-49. Our defensive player of the week.
Yeah, Jefferson's Eric Gibson had 14 tackles, 9 of those for a loss and 2 sacks, and the Bulldogs' second straight shutout, 62-0 against Clarksville, and Jefferson's now 5-0. So
yeah, and they've got they got a big district opener in a couple weeks against Two Springs, which is also 5-0. So don't want to give anything away, and we haven't made any decisions yet as far as game of the week, but who knows? In a couple of weeks, that might have our attention. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Don't forget to check out all of the Week 6 previews we have up right now on the website. Also, be sure, if you haven't done so already, to download our free mobile app. That's available at the App Store for iPhone users and on Google Play for Androids. And it's the perfect way to kind of keep track of all the scores on Friday night, because we have the best live scoreboard in all of East Texas, powered by America's Car Mart. So get hooked up with the app and follow along all Friday night to all the scores around the area. If you have any questions or comments for Chandler or myself, good or bad, you can always hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Clint Buckley. He is at Chandler Vessels. And, of course, you can also get to us with our main account at ETSN.fm. Well, for Chandler Vessels, this is Clint Buckley. Thanks for watching.